Welcome back. We just learned about the module pattern, but you're probably wondering, can we design a way to improve upon it because of the problems mentioned in the previous video? Well, luckily for us, after the module pattern came two really great solutions. Instead of using an IIFE and the module pattern, something called CommonJS and AMD came out, or asynchronous module definition. And they solve the problem of designing a module in a way that we won't have the interference of global scope where we can overwrite certain variables. Let's have a look at how they work. CommonJS looked something like this. We can import different modules or different files using require. We didn't have to add the .js in here. And we can even export specific functions. Like if we wanted to export the fight function, we can just do this. Or if we wanted to just create our own fight function in this module, we can then export it using the syntax module.exports and export an object. Nice and simple, right? None of this immediately invoked function that we had to wrap each file in. Everything just looks clear. And this original CommonJS standard might seem familiar to you because Node is still using it. As a matter of fact, CommonJS was created mainly for the server with Node.js in mind, to use for servers and desktop applications. And it's actually one of the main reasons that Node.js became so popular. This CommonJS import-export module system that came before we even had it in the browser made code very easy to share for Node.js programmers. You might have heard of NPM, Node Package Managers. Node Package Managers, or manager, is just a way for people to share their modules. And Node.js's popularity, well, one of the main reasons that it's grown to the way it has since 2009 is because of NPM, because people using CommonJS were able to share their code to other programmers. So that in Node.js, sharing code and using third-party code became really, really easy. Now, with CommonJS, modules are meant to be loaded synchronously. That means, remember, JavaScript has one call stack. So if a module takes a really long time to load, we're just waiting there until that gets loaded and then the next one gets loaded. And then we get to run our script. And that's not ideal for browsers, where we have users clicking on buttons, entering data into forms, a lot of interaction. Synchronous code on the browser can get really dangerous. And that is why CommonJS was mainly used on the server. But you see, people saw this and said, I like this compact syntax. It's so easy to understand. Plus, I want to use all these packages that these people are writing in NPM. So how can we use some of these useful packages on the browser, even though this import syntax is synchronous and can slow down our web pages? Well, we had two things that came out for a CommonJS. One was Browserify. And as you can see, Browserify lets you require modules in the browser by bundling up all of your dependencies. What does that mean? It means that by using Browserify, I can, in my command line, run something like Browserify and do script.js to bundle.js. And what it will do is it will read my script.js and understand this require syntax, understand the module.exports syntax, and output it all into a bundle.js. Now this bundle.js would be a bundle of all the scripts in my project. So if we go to our index.html file, I can take all these scripts, irregardless of the order. And as long as I use the require and module.exports, Browserify is going to understand, jQuery is needed by this module, and global secret is needed by this module. And it will create all those dependencies and add it all to one single file called bundle.js. So this way we're able to use CommonJS even though it's synchronous, because when we actually deploy this to the browser, it's one giant JavaScript file with everything already in it. And this is what is called a module bundler. And things like Webpack can also do this. So it made CommonJS extremely popular because things like Webpack and Browserify simply traverse the dependency tree of our code and bundle them up in a single file. So we finally have the benefit of, well, no global namespace pollution, and order doesn't matter anymore. All right, so CommonJS is pretty great. And you'll see this syntax in a lot of Node.js projects still. What about the other one, AMD? Well, AMD looks something like this. All right away, if you're like me, you're thinking, this does not look as clean as CommonJS. I already don't like it. And also, you might say, I've never seen this in my life. What are you talking about? AMD was designed specifically for the browsers. That means it loads scripts or modules asynchronously. And that's crucial for browsers, right? Where the code can't really wait until a module has finished loading. And yes, we solved that problem with CommonJS and Browserify or Webpack, but because JavaScript didn't have native modules, people came up with different solutions. So people that didn't like CommonJS or wanted to implement their own used AMD. That's the problem when you don't have a standard solution for a language. Now, as you can see, it's still doing the same thing. If I wanted to import something, well, I define it here, and I have a function that, well, I can define whatever function I want and export it, but I can also import from other modules or do something like .fight and grab the fight function. Now, you may not have heard of AMD, but you may have heard of the library that helped us use AMD on the browsers. It was called require.js. And although it's not used that much anymore, it was the main way that people used AMD modules. Now you're thinking to yourself, require.js is AMD, but it's not CommonJS that uses the word require. Yes, that is true. Extremely confusing, I know, which is, again, another way to show you that this was extremely confusing, and thank God that we have native modules, which we're going to talk about soon. All right, so to review, we have CommonJS and AMD that finally solves the two problems that we had, which was dependency resolution and the pollution of the global scope. We only need to take care of the dependencies when we define our file, and we're explicit with what each module needs, but we're also avoiding the pollution of this global namespace. We learned that AMD helps us load modules asynchronously as needed. And we also learned that CommonJS also allows us to import and be explicit with our dependencies. But at the same time, because it's synchronous, we can use something like a module bundler, like Browserify, to actually bundle all of our code into one bundle.js file and still use it on the browser. But as I mentioned, because of these different standards, if you wanted to, let's say, have a package in NPM so you can share it with the community, now you have two ways that you need to share that package, using AMD or CommonJS, or write for both so that both communities can use it. And there was another thing that came out called UMD, for Universal Module Definition, that tried to solve this problem. But at the end of the day, UMD was just a simple if-else statement to identify the module system or the module style that the current environment supports. So this was great and all, but it wasn't really solving our core problem. We needed a way for JavaScript to unite as a community and say, hey, this is how we import and export modules, because if we want people to take us seriously, we need our own native module system. So here we are. In this current day and age, we now have native module support in JavaScript. And in the next video, all this complication goes out the window with the new ES6 modules. Let's go have a look.